Thanks to Keymailer and Metagames for sending me a review copy of this game. Hey, quick question, do you ever find it weird that nothing ever really changes? Things that go out of style always eventually come back in some capacity, and no one really knows why. I mean, just look at robbery. Stealing other people's stuff, including money, has been frowned upon for centuries, and yet in modern day, companies like Blizzard Entertainment exist. Oh yeah, and 90s shooters are back in style as well. In a growing trend over the last few years, people have started looking further back than gaming classics such as Half-Life and GoldenEye to a time when the only 3D thing in a first-person shooter was the world geometry. The simplicity of old games like Doom has a certain appeal for the audience and indie developers. For the audience, it's a mix of nostalgia and the fact that AAA studios don't make these games anymore, and for indie developers it's because they're fairly easy to make. No complex 3D modeling, no expectation of insanely detailed graphics, and no competition with AAA. It's the perfect indie playground, and its accessibility brings a ton of retro shooters into the market every year. Of course, with that volume, you're not always going to get the perfect game. So when I received a review copy of Beyond Sunset, my mind was on one question. Is this another Doom nostalgia bait cash grab with no substance, or is it something more? Well, after playing the game for a few hours and killing over 5,000 enemies, I've got an answer. For a brief overview, Beyond Sunset is a retro cyberpunk movement shooter. Developed by Metagames/Vaporware, which is the shadiest company name you will ever hear, you have to shoot your way through different areas in San Francisco, or in this game, as it's called, Sunset City. Also, yep, I know. To start on the graphics, I'll say that they encapsulate the style that they're going for. The sprites look crisp, and the animations are also pretty great. Unlike some other games that take on the 90s style, I never had a moment where I didn't know what I was looking at. In fact, there's a really nice attention to detail on sprites, like how if you cut a robot in half, its legs move around for a little bit before falling over. It really gives off they gave a shit vibes, you know? And this extends over into the environment. Sunset City and just the other levels in general are really well put together, and at some points I kind of felt like I was playing an alternate reality version of Cruelty Squad that was made by a sane person. Personally, my favorite parts of the game were where you get to explore the city streets, since it really shows off what the devs are capable of and obviously what they wanted to work on the most. Just the rain, the gloom, the ambience, it all really mixes together. It's really nice. But honestly, the star of the show here is the gameplay. To me, it feels kind of like a mix between Doom and the original Doom, since there's no fall damage, no reload, and on the Eternal side of gameplay, you have a double jump, a dash, and an insta-kill move that gives you ammo and health on execution. In the game, you're given your average set of weapons for a 90s shooter, with your shotguns, your basic pistols, and rifles, but the game changer comes in the form of the katana. Using this thing, you've got a pretty huge slash radius, and if you time it correctly, you can even deflect bullets back at enemies. You know, the katana is just so fun that there were many points in the game that I just stopped using my guns for anything but bigger enemies. And that is something I had to do. If I had it my way, I would have used the katana for the whole game, but this is definitely where some of the Doom Eternal combat chess leaks through the inspiration. There's different enemy types that require different types of damage to kill them easier, like this shield enemy who you can't really hurt until you shoot a shield away. And for me, the gameplay really shines when you get put in these combat scenarios with multiple different enemy types, since it forces you to actually think, and the movement options really pull it all together in a package that I can only describe as fucking satisfying. In any other game, I'd groan at the thought of going through room after room of enemies, but since the gameplay is the real draw here, I'm completely fine with it. Now, there's also ways for you to customize how you fight in this game. Killing enemies gives you money that you can spend at genetic vendors, and you can gain these kind of Bioshock type powers like freezing or poisoning, and while it is cool, Lucy is usually capable enough at default to clear any room without them, and I often found myself constantly forgetting that I even had these augments in the first place. Before moving on to the story section of the video, I'd also like to touch on the boss fights, which are pretty insane. Through the levels, you get really accustomed to being on top of the food chain until you reach the end of level fight, which will put you in your place. These fights are a huge change of pace in the game, and it mostly comes down to movement and insane reaction times. And at first, I wasn't really a fan of how you get tossed into the deep end of the pool with these encounters, until I realized that they are actually almost designed for you to fail. In classic boss fight fashion, they have these insane power moves that will shut you down if you fail to dodge it more than once, and really the overall trick to beating them is off memory and predicting the boss's attack patterns, which makes it really satisfying when you eventually evolve into the subject matter expert on the fight that the game wants you to be. So moving into the story is where the game loses a lot of steam for me. You play as a woman named Lucy who's got amnesia and you're trying to regain your memories. And there's a person that's agreed to help you do this named Yuri, but to do that you need to help her. And through the game you carry out a bunch of missions through Sunset City as she tries to help you. The overall problem with this is that I don't really find it interesting as a story, and this probably comes down to the way that it's presented. Usually before missions you'll get a pixel art cutscene of two characters talking, and it's just a text box after text box while it flicks back and forth between two images of these characters, and it just feels really drab. I'd also say that the notable lack of voice acting makes these scenes worse, since you don't really feel like you're getting anything here. No idea of what the character sounds like, their motivations, how they really talk. As a person that analyzes video games constantly, I like to imagine that I can pay pretty close attention to a story, except hours into this game and I still don't really care about any of these characters I've met, and overall, I don't even know what I'm doing. It's only about halfway through the game that things actually start to get interesting, and I'll be honest, I don't think that's good enough. If this game caught me on a bad day, I doubt I would make it past the first level, because there's not really any motivation to do it. And a lot of this is part of a bigger problem, which is how faithfully the game imitates the 90s shooter genre. In the cutscenes, there's a lot of words that get said that don't really turn out to be about anything, but there's also words that are said that happen to be your main objective for the entire chapter. And you better not miss it, because it is not getting repeated to you. Most missions start with you being plonked into an area with about 2 words to go on to describe your actual mission. In the first level, we have to kill a Yakuza boss who's locked in his compound, and in my playthrough, I first talked to this vendor who pointed me in the direction of this mall for a mission. After I couldn't find what he's looking for, I went back to him and he restated what he wanted me to find with no extra details and no options for me to ask about the whole mission again. So after that, I started wandering around, accidentally opening doors with keys I didn't even know I picked up, walking into parts of the city that weren't even relevant to the mission I was doing. What I eventually found after an hour of walking around was that to unlock the gate to the compound, you have to find 4 computer terminals around the city area. After you find them, you have to plug into their virtual net, solve a puzzle in each one, and only then will you be able to open the gate. This info was never communicated to me, and it wasn't hinted at where the computers might be. And if you think that talking to the NPCs might be the key to this puzzle, I'll say that I don't know, because there's a lot of NPCs and all of the ones that I talked to either had a whole lot of nothing to say or had something to say that I couldn't use. Something that would make this game way better is a menu that shows you your current missions, because there were times in the first level where I was doing multiple different missions that weren't related and I didn't even know. And even if I did, I didn't know the individual details of each one. So if I got something that could open a door, I didn't know if I was opening a door for a side quest or the main quest. Like, I understand the appeal of working things out for yourself, and I also understand that I might be just completely stupid and oblivious, but the game drops you into areas with absolutely nothing to go on, and you stumble around until you just happen to find where you need to go. Another downside is that usually many objectives require you to do a network puzzle to complete them, and I'll say that these things aren't fun at all. When you're inside a virtual net, you have to fight a bunch of network enemies, except you don't get any of your usual weapons, so it's just a slog figuring out exactly what the game wants you to do, while also not being able to play the actual fun part of the game, which is fighting and killing things with your guns. And yeah, after that, there's not much else I have to say, other than the fact that I think that this enemy's obnoxiously loud death sound is really funny. Overall, Beyond Sunset is not a Doom nostalgia bait cash grab. It's really got something here, but it seems to be getting in its own way at some points. Gameplay wise, it's an addictive, fast-paced shooter that seems to almost be going through an identity crisis. Like, it can't tell if it wants to be a no bullshit bullet storm or a thought-provoking puzzle game. And no matter how amazing the gameplay is, I can't help but roll my eyes every time I stumble into a puzzle, because I know that I don't get to play more of the game I want to play until I can figure out how many hoops I need to jump through to get back to that game. Overall, I'll give Beyond Sunset a 6 out of 10. The gameplay saves the experience for me, and if they make the objectives clearer in upcoming patches, I think the story might come across better than it did the first time. I just really think there's a great, flashy, stylish, fun game underneath some of this stuff I don't like, and if they fix some of it, if they do get around to fixing it, then it could be one of the best retro shooters on the market of this year. Anyway, this has been B4 Brandoss on Brandoss Bytes. I'll see you later.